to move things along. Okay, I'm just gonna put it like that. And Ms. Malcolson, if you wanna take it off.
Absolutely, and I will get straight to the point, but I do have to start by thanking my colleagues at MCEDC and the county government. I am new to these budgets, and they very graciously answered every stupid question I had. They provided me with all of the information I requested, and as you've seen from this packet in particular, MCEDC provided extensive materials to respond to questions raised by committee members at your February meeting when you talked about their strategic plan and the overview. So there's a lot here to unpack. There's a lot about metrics, marketing, responsibilities. Those things I think we need to put aside for today, because today we're really going to focus on the budget and the budget numbers. But I do know that there's interest in the committee in coming back to those issues. So we're not putting them aside indefinitely, just temporarily. So the MCEDC budget this year is a 3% increase for inflationary purposes over last year. In the prior year, there had been a 24% increase from about 5 million to 6.2 million. However, I need to say that for many years prior to that, there was no increase. So they were ready for an adjustment last year. There are one of the things that the committee asked that I do want to bring to your attention is you asked how their budget relates to their work plan. So on page 2 of the staff report are the 5 goals that they have in their work program. And then in the chart at the top of page 3, you can see what the budget breakdown is for each work plan element. 900,000 for administration and overhead, over $3 million for their first goal, which is job creation and retention, 700,000 for entrepreneurship, 450,000 for women, minority, and underserved business outreach, close to 300,000 for strategic initiatives, and over 900,000 for marketing. So I will keep going unless at any point committee members have a question and want to jump in. Please let me know. So the FY24 request is attached on Circle 21, and it's presented in summary form on the chart on the next page, where I've compared what they've asked for in the approved FY23 budget with what they're asking for this year. And generally, this budget, primarily supports their personnel in over 65% of the total budget. It includes funding for 29.25 full-time equivalents. And although they've listed the positions here, you do not do the same position by position determination or examination of vacancies, because with this organization, you're going to give them a total budget and they determine how to spend it. So to the extent that you think that the funding is not aligned with what you think their priorities should be, that's a good discussion to have, but we're not going to do the type of line item examination you do elsewhere. Some of the things I did want to highlight in terms of the change from last year is a significant shift towards marketing. And if you look at the table on page 4, you can see that their proposal for FY24 is to almost double the marketing budget from $450,000 to $836,000. And some of the other changes that I'll note, the increases that you'll see here are in business travel, meals and entertainment, and some decreases in some of the key areas for professional services, professional development, business development, and strategic initiatives. And we may want to ask Mr. Tompkins to address some of what the board's thinking is, or the staff's thinking at this point in making those shifts. And I think maybe I'll stop there and let him at least address that particular issue.
I think you're doing a good job, so
Okay.
continue. Good afternoon, everyone. Pleased to be here. Just to provide a little bit more context, we originally requested from the county executive a budget of $6.8 million because we looked at our competition, we looked at the momentum we're building, and the county executive recommended just under $6.4 million. So we went and readjusted that. In terms of the question about marketing, it's a little bit hidden because we took $700,000 from last year and carried that money over into this year to supplement our budget. So the marketing numbers for this year in terms of the budget are underrepresented, and that was intentional. For Councilmember Glass, as you remember, for many years we were challenged in terms of why we were carrying balances over, and we committed to taking them down and basically eliminating them. So the last elimination project was to take $700,000 from last year and to use it for marketing purposes for this year. So it looks like a big jump, but we want to, quote, maintain the momentum, and we feel it's incredibly important. We have been underrepresented both in this community and in the region in terms of the marketing that we do. We have a lot of catch-up to do. We still have a long way to go.
At this point, does anybody from the committee would like to speak? I do want to say very quickly, since we're talking about the marketing, we're going to have a session after the budget on how you're doing marketing. And I'm just going to leave it there. That just means that I think that we do have a long way to go on how to be more effective on our strategy. But with that, I wonder if Councilmember Sells.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What sticks out to me is the half of the budget is going towards retention and job creation. And so I'm just, as we're thinking about the marketing, we're investing a considerable amount of money into marketing next year. I'm hoping that the projections for next year's retention and job creation will reflect the investments we're making in the marketing and advertising. And so I believe the marketing campaign is launching this month, the Visit Montgomery, or is this the Be Next campaign? Which
there are multiple campaigns that are
Yes.
running, so
Okay.
it depends on which one. The Be Next has started. The Heavy Up, actually, you'll actually start seeing TV commercials any day now. So the Heavy Up for that starts now.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of targeted media, whether it was geofencing or social media, that's been going on sporadically throughout the year.
Yeah, I'm just, I too want to learn more about, what impact we're making. Usually when you do ad buys, you do media placement, they'll tell you what your reach is, how many people you're impacting, and then what the return.
Sure. Actually, we have that.
Okay.
We were going to do a presentation today, but I think 117 pages of information was probably
Is only limited.
enough. And then we did an updated presentation and have all of those stats. There is a page in the deck that has most of those stats, but we're happy to review those in for greater detail.
Yeah, it's just half of our budget is being spent on retaining companies and creating jobs. And so as we're marketing and thinking about that line item, I just hope that
The marketing is designed to support all of that. It
Yeah.
may be the way in which I classified it, so we can visit how it's classified, but the marketing supports attraction, retention, and expansion.
okay. And maybe we'll learn more about the 3 businesses that were mentioned. Is it just those 3 businesses that were mentioned as retained in the county?
Can you clarify the 3 businesses that were mentioned?
Yeah, so in the presentation and the notes, when I looked at, which businesses were retained, it said about 700 jobs, and it
Oh.
mentioned 3 companies. And so I just wanted to make sure if that was the level of companies, or those were the only companies we retained?
I think you may be referring to our annual report. I'm going to have to go back and check. I think we were using examples. It's significantly more than 3. It's,
Okay.
many
Okay.
hundreds. But yeah, those were examples, so we did highlight so
Okay.
that you could see what the company was, what it was all about, and for that particular company, the jobs that were involved.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Before I let Councilwoman Balcom to speak, I just remembered reading on the paper a few weeks ago that Amenton, the global engineering company, left Gatesburg to go to Northern Virginia. So talking about retention, at some point we would need to have a deep dive on that. And seeing why those businesses are leaving in the county, like a specific, like is there like an interview process after they leave, why that is? You don't need to answer that right now, but just know that that's something that we are concerned and we want to dig into. Councilwoman,
Thank you. Can we talk either Ms. Michelson and or Mr. Tompkins talk about the reserves? I know there was some confusion in the reserves.
I stopped midstream, so I'll finish the what's in the memo here. But let me first talk about the on page 6, looking at their FY23 budget that was approved versus projected. And as Mr. Tompkins already noted, there was significantly more spent on marketing than was originally budgeted. And that was a very conscious decision to launch a marketing campaign. So it wasn't just a whoops, we've spent too much, more than we thought. It was very consciously decided that a lot of resources should go into marketing. At the same time, if you look at the funding for personnel costs, they were much less than budgeted. And, you know, that may be something that the committee wants to get a little bit more information about just to understand. At this point, they only have 3 vacancies. So it's not as if the gap is because there's a large number of vacancies. And then I'll get to the issue of the fund balance. If you look at their projections, both their projections and their fiscal statement. So in their year-end fiscal statement for 21 and 22, and I know the Fed committee had previously expressed concern, at the year-end of 21, they had $2.3 million remaining in their reserves. At the end of 22, it was, and this is, by the way, the undesignated, the reserves without donor restrictions, and they had quite a few funds with donor restrictions, primarily due to the pandemic, where they were playing a key role in dispersing some of the funding that went out. So the net assets at the end of FY21 were $2.3 million. At the end of FY22, $1.3 million. And then if you look at their latest statement of financial position, what they gave us on their March 31st, what they had, it was close to about 800,000 left in reserves. And so I both looked at the reserves and their projections of what they would spend by year end. And on Circle 21 and 22, they've given us their projections. And their projections show that at year end, they will be approximately 100,000 more in expenditures than what they budgeted, which they would draw down from reserves. And so one of the issues that I've raised for you is if the undesignated reserves are so significant, and by the way, let me mention they also have 900,000 in designated reserves. And those designated reserves are because the board decided that it would be a good policy to hold 3 months of operation in reserve. So if they had a cash flow problem or something like that, they would have the 900,000 to cover that. And in fact, they've had points where their cash flow has dipped. in part because of perhaps even a delay from the county of reimbursing them. So it is legitimate to have some amount of reserves there, and the question that I've raised is exactly what's the size of that reserve, and can we take it down a little bit as an offset to the FY24 budget costs. So with the $800,000 that was there at the end of March and the approximately $100,000 that they would need, I suggested just taking it down $500,000 to give them a little bit of a cushion. And Mr. Tompkins has said to me that there is some updated numbers, either in terms of what their current reserve might be. I don't know if they have updated numbers yet, or their projections of expenditures. And I don't think it would be worthwhile for the committee to get into a lengthy discussion about the specifics of the numbers. If you're concerned, I'm happy to work with Mr. Tompkins to go through updated numbers to see if you want to refine my suggestion to reduce it by $500,000. And Councilmember Balcom, I don't know if that was what you were hoping to hear or you had specific questions.
Well, I guess that before I could make a decision as to how much to draw it down, I think it's important to find out, what the number is and how the number changes from month to month. So if this is for instance, I think it makes a big difference if the 800,000 at the end of March is a steady number that's the reserve, that's a stable number, or if that number fluctuates significantly from month to month.
Right, and
that's important.
And it could be that it does fluctuate. In fact, I'm sure it does, which is why we look at what they have as projections for year end. So we know by the end of the year, will they have money left or not? Are they going above what their expenses are?
Well, can Mr. Tompkins, can you please chime in?
Yeah, I'll answer very briefly. It is a complicated issue. We don't have an additional 800,000 in reserves. You have to look at where you're going to end the year. And while Ms. Michelson attempted to do that, we're on deadline. There are some things that I believe were missed and that she wouldn't know because we didn't have a chance to sit down with her to explain. But the bottom line is that 800,000 is not there. We sat down between Wednesday afternoon and this morning and did an updated calculation. We do believe we could squeeze out an additional $250,000, meaning in reserves in funds available that we would not need to use, that are not restricted. And we feel very comfortable with that number because we do this every year. And normally we don't give that number to the to the council as part of our budget process. We just do the P&L. So that's why you would be less familiar with it, because for us it's just what we do behind the scenes. But we're very confident about our projections. There are lots of things that happen. For instance, at the end of December, we were down to $1 million total, including our reserve. January 15th, we were down to $450,000 and would not have made payroll had we not worked very closely with the county executive's office, Jake Weissman in particular. And within 10 days, he turned around a check to make sure that we could pay our bills at the end of January. That was an anomaly, but it fluctuates dramatically, so you really have to project out exactly what you think you're going to spend. And this is without unanticipated expenses. As an example, in the month of April, 2 unanticipated expenses. The trip to Taiwan, that trip cost $49,000. We only knew about it, I would say, the beginning to middle of March. And when those bills came in, that's how much it was. That was not planned, it was not anticipated, but things happen for good reasons, by the way.
And I'm just going to hop in.
Sure.
I'll yield back to Councilmember Balcom. But you said that MCEDC was on the verge of insolvency in January?
We had an unusual set of circumstances in January that we've never been through before.
What were those circumstances?
some of the circumstances were that we were having to prepay for our media, number one. Number two, we have a new contract. And the contract is a little bit more complicated than either of us anticipated it to be in terms of when we receive cash. So in some cases, we are advanced money, but in other cases, at least half of our budget, we have to spend the money and then get reimbursed. So it's part of that reimbursement process that is the issue. So if we put $1 million out the door, we have not received that $1 million from the county. We then have to send an invoice with detailed documentation.
Well, I will say that is a hard transition to make, but that is the position that almost every other nonprofit organization in Montgomery County is in. And so I would say that MCDC has been benefited over the last number of years, but most other organizations that work contractually with the county work under that system. And so I'm glad to know that it was not insolvency, but it was money flow, and that while the cash balance might have been low, you knew that the county was going to reimburse at some time. And much like other organizations, you pick up a phone and you say, "I really need this," and as long as the contract allows for it, it happens. So thank you for elaborating. I'll yield back.
I think you've answered my question from the perspective of, I don't know, Chair, at what point we're going to go through these decision points. So that answered my first question. And I think that from the perspective of the vacancies, my understanding from the personnel cost, the variance from approved to projected, it was a matter of the timing of when you filled those positions?
Yes, we had a difficult time filling positions, as everybody has. And we've been very fortunate. In the last 6 weeks, we've hired 5 new people. So that's why when you also look at the variance this year versus what we're projecting next year, those people are employed. And 2 of the vacancies we have now, we're very close to filling. So we'll probably be down to 1 before the end of the year.
Council President Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Tompkins, for answering the question that I asked previously. I just have some kind of big picture questions. As I'm looking at the budget, the FY23 and then the requested FY24, actually the revised FY24. And before I ask you, let me ask Mr. Weissman, why did the county executive not approve the requested budget?
Appreciate the question, Council President. For the record, Jake Weissman, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for the County Executive. We appreciate the work that MCEDC is doing. Obviously, it's a tight budget year, and we have to be very careful. And the additional request was $600,000 for continuation of the Be Next campaign and growth. And while we want to see more marketing from MCEDC, the County Executive, our office, OMB, was not yet convinced that the Be Next campaign merited another $600,000.
Got it. Thank you for that. So it was entirely that media campaign. Yeah.
I should clarify, it was for marketing overall. It was not just Be Next.
Okay.
We were doing campaigns sporadically. For instance, we're on WTOP, on for 6 weeks, off for 12. And that's not a great way to do the marketing. You need more consistency in terms of your flights. So we're not doing full year marketing for our multiple campaigns, although a big portion of that was for Be Next. I also understand that because of the tight budget, the county executive suggested that we don't know how things are going, and if they're going well, then just come back for an additional appropriation.
Absolutely.
That all makes sense, and thank you for the clarification regarding the marketing. The bigger picture question I have for you, Mr. Tompkins, again, looking at the chart, I think on the page 4 in the packet, operating expenses are around $400,000, and this is outside of personnel. What are operating expenses? Because I see business travel, meals and entertainment, which are very closely associated with business travel, and then you have a separate marketing and communications. And so and then office space. So what is operating expenses?
Operating expenses is everything from rent And you have to also look, there's an anomaly there. We pay the rent for 3 organizations and then get reimbursed. So you'll see an expense and outlay with, I think, about a $70,000 reimbursement. So we have $300,000 in rent alone.
Well, and because I know that rent normally is incorporated in operating expenses, but there's a line item under directly underneath that says office space, FF&E, and so I didn't know what that necessarily meant.
I think FF&E, it's like fixtures, furnishings, and
Got
something
it.
else. Equipment, thank you.
Equipment, so-
Okay.
So, you know, if you were to need new furniture or things like that.
Understood. Thank you. So, I think for me, I appreciate the request for the additional communication and marketing. As one of the programs is underway or about to really kick off, I would prefer a wait and see strategy to see how it goes. I agree with the chair about a broader conversation about marketing, because having marketing on WTOP is one thing, but having marketing in other parts of the country, speaking about how business friendly, about how smart our residents are, is a different type of strategy. And so I agree that there should be another conversation about this. And then just lastly, coming back to the reserves, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, but I'll tee it up. How did you come to the $250,000 decision about that could be transferred over to the next
Sure.
fiscal
All we
year?
did was update all of our projections for revenue and expenses. We're about to close April this weekend. So we pretty much know what April looks like. Then we went through every line item for May and June and basically added it up. We looked at a couple of expenses that had not been updated in March, and this is what we normally would do, because we didn't have that in mind when we were preparing the budget, to be honest with you. We looked at it as our normal year-end process, and so as we did the calculations, actually it wasn't that different from our internal calculations a month ago, but that had not been shared with the county council. So we just went back and did a double check based on our internal records. We thought there was going to be an extra $250,000 that we would not spend. We redid it again in the last 3 days very quickly to see what it looks like, to see if anything has changed. And so from our internal calculations, we said after restrictions, after all our bills are paid, then we believe that there's an extra $250,000.
And then just real last question, Madam Chair. The personnel costs, the delta being a little more than $1 million, is that still an accurate projection?
Pretty much so, yes.
Would you have concerns with carrying over a majority of that into FY24 unless you expect to be able to hire $1 million worth of people in the next 3 months?
Well, we wouldn't be, because we are now basically fully employed. So we will spend 97 to 100% of what we budgeted for next year.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify now, since $250,000 just appeared, I would say the county executive is recommending a 3% increase, right? So that's $186,000. So this $250 that you're talking about can cover that cost, that $186. Is that correct? Yes.
I believe so.
So if that's correct, I'm not thinking about reductions anymore because they can cover that, right? But you are, Marlene, you're still concerned about you still want to cut $500,000 besides that. Is that?
Right. So, based on what we've heard,
Just a little bit closer.
Just get closer.
Okay, okay,
Your,
thank you.
your
Is that
voice is
better?
very soft.
Okay.
Contrary to
no.
mine. Yeah.
People never say that about me. So, okay. So based on what we've learned, there are two things here. One is, I had recommended both a $500,000 reduction based on the reserve, and that the increase be taken out and put on the reconciliation list as you are doing with every other increase. So given what we've heard today from Mr. Tompkins, I would say take the reduction down to 250 rather than the 500, but I would still say, for consistency with what you're doing with every other budget, to put the increase on the reconciliation list so that you're able to look at it relative to all the other choices that you need to make.
I think that's right, and we can say, I'm gonna let you speak in 1 second. The 3% in the high priority, as we have done with everybody else, and then the 250 that she mentioned. Councilmember Sales.
Yes, I was just going to ask before we cut the 250, is the MCDC anticipating any unforeseen circumstances that would warrant needing those resources to be on hand?
It happens all the time, and I'll give you another example that's fresh on everybody's mind. ARPA H, $50,000.
Novavax.
So that's my answer. Things come up all the time. Opportunities also come up. So you just don't want to look at the downside. We look at ARPA H as an opportunity, by the way. And so we have been aggressive, as you know. We're continuing to, well, we can get into that later, but that's a good example.
And I just want to say, too, most of the funding for MCEDC comes from the county. And to the extent that there's a new opportunity, they should absolutely come back to the council and seek a special appropriation. So we're trying to figure out a budget for the norm. We'll be really delighted if there's something that is above and beyond the normal and something that the council feels is worthy of additional funding. So that can always be an option.
Okay.
Can I just confirm one thing? And I'm glad you said what you did about how you put things in the different categories. As I read your original report, the 3% increase, I thought you had recommended not go for reconciliation or for,
And I just heard the committee
yeah,
say
so I
they
just want to
want, yes.
clarify that.
So
that will
the
be
reductions
considered.
would be the increase and the 250,000, and then the increase would be put on the reconciliation list, and the committee. I heard the
High
committee chair say
priority.
high priority, and
like everybody else.
I assume
Consensus.
everyone else was agreeing
Yes.
with that. So
Yes.
okay.
And then one other question, because half of MCDC's budget is spent on workforce development and retention, and we're also giving $2.5 million to workforce development, are those two entities working together?
We
Because
work
it's part of
together.
your work plan, and so I just want to know if we're working in concert with each other too.
Absolutely, we have a shared
Okay.
employee. One of our employees is 50% reimbursed to work for WorkSource Montgomery, and the other 50% of the time is for us. So we're joined at the hip. And I invite you over to our office. The head of WorkSource Montgomery sits right next door to me, literally 5 feet away.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Member Balkan.
Thank you. Just want to clarify in terms of any unforeseen things happening, the 900 is still there. So that's there. We're not touching that. That's the reserve in case you have a shortfall. So this 250 makes sense that if something unforeseen happens, you still have that pot of money. Okay. And then just globally, in this discussion about the budget and the potential for a 10% tax increase and another 7% tax increase next year, when we talk about that, very often the response is we need to increase the tax base, right? So this is the entity and this is the initiative that we're going to try to do that. So I think we need to continue to invest, and so I appreciate the high priority for the reconciliation. Thank you.
Wholeheartedly agree. Last word, Councilmember. No? Okay, good, even better. Anything else, Ms. Michelson, on this?
No, I think
item.
you've covered everything on this budget. So.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for all your help and bye. Next, we have the Office of the Executive Business Center team. Want to take it away? Who wants to kick it off? Marlene, you or?
No, Eunice will start us
Okay,
off.
go ahead.
Thank you, Committee Chair. My name is Eunice Jung, Legislative Analyst. And I want to thank Ms. Michelson for preparing this packet, but I'll go right ahead. Business Center team, as you know, is part of the County Executive, and the decisions that are made before this ECON Committee will be transmitted to the GO Committee session, which will be on May 5th for the full County Executive budget. In FY24, the C recommended operating budget for the Business Center is $1,343,220. This is about a 20% increase from FY23 approved. They also want 8 total FTEs, which is an increase of 2 FTEs. I'll get right into the requested changes. There are 3 items that we want to talk about. First, they want to add 2 business liaison positions in the amount of $184,676. So the business liaison position is one that goes out into the community and helps businesses and business owners directly. As Mr. Weissman said in last Friday's session with Econ, there are over 33,000 businesses in Montgomery County, so this is a big workload. So they want to hire these 2 positions in FY24 in order to help with that workload and better assist businesses directly. We also want to note that in FY23, though, they did hire 1 new business liaison position, and 1 is currently I believe, in the final hiring stages. So they have 2 new ones, and they're requesting 2 more for FY24. Our staff recommendation for this is to put this as a priority on the reconciliation list, or alternatively, this cost could potentially be delayed to FY25 while we assess what they can do with their current workload. Their current staffing, sorry. Our next requested change is enhancing marketing for the White Oak Science Gateway in the amount of $50,000.
Can we do each one?
Oh,
one by
yes,
one?
of course.
Yeah. And you're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you
Straight
so
up, I know you're new,
Yeah.
and you hit the road running right away, and I love that. So thank you for all that. Council President Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great job. Thank you. So the business center liaisons, 1 has already been hired and 1 we're trying to get on board. Is that correct? Mr.
Correct. We hired. In fact, let me take a moment because we do have a few of our business center team here tonight or today. So we have Ms. Clute, who's our small business navigator back there. Mr. Bigelow, who's one of our program managers doing the Economic Development Fund. Ms. Simple, who helps work with our incubators, and then Ms. Chedham, who's one of our business liaisons. And yes, she was hired in November when I joined the team. We have made an offer, and that position will start soon. And then Mr. Karoma, who's not here, is also one of our business liaisons. So all 3 of our business liaisons are filled. The incumbent that's coming in will be here at the end of May.
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome to everybody. And so, in trying to in requesting that 2 more individuals be hired, share with us what the workload and/or the metrics are for the existing individuals. What is a business liaison supposed to do, and how do we measure their success?
Sure. Excuse me. Success is measured by businesses assisted and businesses conducted through outreach. So our business liaisons are expected to spend about 2 business days out in the community, working with businesses. Right now, we're doing what we're calling a pilot program, where they're going around to each region, since we're having new business liaisons join us. Getting to know the regional directors and those communities, and working in places where the regional directors and their teams are unable to get more often than not. And then the other part of their time is spent assisting directly with businesses that contact the business center through the emails or through referrals from MCDC or from our chamber partners. And so, again, the 2 main metrics that I'm concerned with are businesses that we conduct outreach to, so those that we've met that we've never met before, whether they needed assistance or not. And then those that we directly assist through whatever needs they need, startup, license referral, permitting access, referrals, etc.
And if I may just clarify, what Mr. Smith is talking about is, and I'll pick on Ms. Cheatham as our newest business liaison, literally going door to door in Silver Spring, in Four Corners, and East County, in a variety of places, and literally just going to businesses and saying, what's going on, how can we help, how can the county government be more responsive to you?
And you answered the question I was going to ask, in that I was curious if the referrals or the work was based on people calling and saying I have a problem and showing up at their door, or if it's going to door. So this is very helpful. I'm just going to say one more comment just to put a pin on it, because I think it comes up later in this packet, but it is something that we've talked about the lack of an actual directory of small businesses in the county. We know that one does not exist, whether it's at DPS or somewhere else, and if these individuals can help get us there by going door to door and cataloging all the businesses and contacts, I think that would be a wonderful thing. Thank you.
I will say very quickly, and I'm hoping council members Balkan and Sales can jump in too, so we can close this item. I am concerned of adding 2 new people right now, especially because the ones that you already have are brand new. You're like seeing what they can do. They're looking at your challenges. Maybe your description needs to be updated next year once you see the work that the people that you currently have develop. I wouldn't recommend having these 2 positions at this point. Maybe next year, but that's me. Looking forward to the comments from Ms. Councilmember Balkan and Sales.
I'm never one to spend money, but I think that the success of this unit, and I support this unit, the success of this unit is that you build a reputation that businesses know where to go to. And to do that, there needs to be a critical mass in the community, a significant presence in the community to establish that that you are the entity to go to when you need help. And so I think that will be difficult to do without the staff. The flip side of that is, we've seen it's just so hard to find people right now and to get people up and running. And so, I share the concern about how is it going so far? Is it doing what you intended to do, and what lessons learned before you hire the next one. And so we've got one person who started, I haven't met you, welcome, and then somebody starting right away. So I think there is a value in pausing and saying, okay, is this rollout as intended? But perhaps it's not waiting a full year. Perhaps there might be a lapse that kind of makes sense. And there's going to be a natural lapse anyway because of new positions and because it just takes that long to hire. So that it's kind of what I'm sensing. But the other issue that is, of course, my issue is geography. And it's not possible to look at the entire county without boots on the ground. And so I'm concerned that without additional staff, my community is going to get left behind. So those are my thoughts on this position.
And if I could just address, from my perspective, the idea of having liaisons that can reach throughout the county is a wonderful idea. One of the questions is, do you need to add staff to do that, or can you repurpose some existing staff? And I know the council's been very concerned about the number of vacancies, but every time you decide there's a new task to do, in my mind, the automatic response is not, you need to expand county government. Sometimes it should be, how do we take somebody else and shift them into this liaison position to make sure we're getting the coverage we need?
So I don't know if I still have the floor. Yeah. So I looked at that. I saw that in the packet, and I do have feelings about that. In that, these are people who have, I would assume, have specific skill sets, and in my opinion, it can't be someone's third job or because it will go to the back burner. And so I wouldn't want the task to be one of many tasks that somebody else does. So if the county's going to do it, we need to do it right.
Appreciate it, Madam Chair. And I just want to clarify. I appreciate those comments. Of the roughly 28,000 businesses that don't fall under the strategic industries business, we right now have a business liaison for roughly every 9,300, which is an impossible task. If we want a economic development structure in this county where businesses felt heard and they feel that they have an option to get services that isn't banging doors or going to press or calling up their council members or the county executive nonstop, we need to have the boots on the ground. We need to have the people who can go talk to the businesses. It's also the only way that we are going to identify the patterns that everyday businesses face. You know, when I was joining the chair last week, was it? Yeah, last week. Time doesn't mean anything. For the businesses that we were visiting in Wheaton, I was struck by, and it's something you hear again and again, average business owners do not have time or space to go and hunt things down and try to fix systems. That is our job as government, to find the problems and fix them and make it that other businesses don't face them again. The simple reality is we cannot find these problems without seeking them out, without being proactive and talking to businesses, which is what these liaisons are doing. I understand, you know, that God knows, I kind of understand the budget pressures that the council is under, and understand kind of the balancing act. At the same time, what Mr. Smith, and you know, I'll give him credit, has been able to do with the team in his short time here, and what the vision that the county executive and Mr. Smith and our team has for this business liaisons. You know, as I mentioned last week, our goal is not to get to 5. Our goal is eventually to get to 7, 1 for each councilmanic district, so we can make sure that no matter the size, businesses are being served at the same rate. We can only do that by continuing to invest and not taking our foot off the brake. I think, going to Ms. Michelson's point, for the last fiscal year, we were able to repurpose 2 positions. Those weren't additions from the council. Those were 2 positions moved from the CEC to, at that time, the business advancement team for the purpose of business liaisons. This year, repurposing 2 positions wasn't on the table, which is why we brought this to the council.
All right, great, thank you. I'm gonna let Council President Glass make a comment, and right after that, we need to decide if this is a priority or high priority.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Balcom and the points she raised. Going back to MCEDC for a second, one of their line items is women, minority, and underserved business outreach, right? In which it is stated that the goal of that is to identify and promote through targeted outreach resources to strengthen the capacity of women, minority, and diverse business owners to launch and expand their companies. How do these differ, if they do?
It's interesting because we were just yesterday having a meeting with Mr. Stewart and Ms. Narabelli about this exact question, and a lot of what that position is focused on is access to capital and helping especially businesses in these targeted communities find ways to start up and find funding in ways that the county does not have the resources or the ability to do so. What we are focused on is removing the hurdles. Mr. Smith is fond of saying, if it's death by 1,000 cuts in the county, we want to find 50 or 100 that we can eliminate.
Understood that. Thank you for the clarification. In the future, we might want to make that point explicit about funding support for those communities, and I appreciate Mr. Tompkins nodding at that suggestion. So I'd like to strike a balance, and given that we have one liaison already here, welcome, one who's onboarding, and your request is for 2, and the council staff recommendation is 2 at priority, I would like to suggest we have 1 at high priority and start in the middle of the year to see how the onboarding process goes.
I agree. I think.
And you currently have 3 business liaisons for the current fiscal year. And approximately how many interactions with businesses do you, are you tracking for each liaison annually? Approximately how many businesses are they connecting with?
Well, I appreciate that question, Councilmember Sales, and I will just say that before I got here in November, tracking was less than where we're at. We're looking to increase that and understand it. So At the moment, I would say it's 20 to 30 businesses a week, based on what I'm seeing. But again, the business advancement team, as we shared last week before it became the business center, was primarily focused on issuing pandemic grants. And I think we're getting our feet underneath ourselves in terms of how we're going to continue to track that. In fact, that was one of the questions the future business liaison has, is what's going to be my caseload. And so, but I would say 20 to 30 businesses a week in terms of outreach. And then the number of businesses that show up on our doorstep it's fewer. It's usually 10 to 15 businesses a week, but there's more that it can be distributed to.
That's not to get ahead, but that's also why the CRM is such an important part. We need to be able, not to provide metrics, but going to what Councilmember Glass was saying, to be able to build that business directory, especially for demographics, which is that one key piece that is not available through any data source.
Right.
And so I brought that up because you brought up a really good statistic about the 9,000 businesses per councilmanic district. And just thinking about the money that we could spend to reach out to the businesses that we know that exist, to tell them about this business center, to tell them about all the initiatives, and then request that they fill out this form to say if they need information, so we're more targeted in our approach. And in return, we will include them in this new digital business directory. I think we could incentivize businesses to reach out, and the ones that we don't hear from could be the work plan for these business liaisons to start targeting the businesses that we're not hearing from. But, with reaching 20, 30 businesses a week, I want us to be much more targeted in our outreach. And, this could also be just a better marketing endeavor for us as well. So looking forward to some updates. Thank you.
Great. And just to make it clear, it's great to have business liaisons, but at the end of the day, it is critical for each department, as you witnessed with me last week, and I've been doing this tour with the DPS director, making sure that each department, DPS, HHS, has staff members who have a culture of helping businesses to succeed. If there's an issue, my attitude shouldn't be, no. My attitude should be, how can I help you make sure that we, go through these obstacles so you can be successful. So that's not a job of a business liaison. That's the job of each department, making sure there's a distinction there. So I hear from my colleagues that instead of 2 business liaison positions, we are going to say, if everybody agrees, or most of us, there will be one high priority and the other one priority. Is that correct?
And the high priority one would be lapsed 6 months, I believe I heard.
Yeah, I'm suggesting 6 months to see how the onboarding and roles and responsibilities play out.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Are we all in agreement? Okay, good. Let's move forward.
Thank you, Committee Chair. The next addition is enhancement for marketing for White Oak Science Gateway. This is an expense of $50,000. So White Oak Science Gateway is a historically underdeveloped part of East County, and it's part of County Executive's goals around equity to bring more businesses and customers to this area. But in order to do so, it requires a great deal of advertising and marketing, and that's why they're requesting this amount. We recommend this as either a priority item on the reconciliation list, or an alternative would be to let MCEDC take the lead on using their resources to see what they could do for White Oak Science Gateway.
Thank you for that. I don't understand why this is here, and I do not support this at all. And I would say eliminate it right away. Not because I don't believe and I want to help White Oak. That's not the point. It's just it does not belong here. That's not the job of this business center. That's the job of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. That's the job of Viva White Oak, whenever they're going to actually do what they're supposed to do. We've been talking about it for the last 10 years. I think it's wrong if we start picking each community this way when it's not your role. That simple. Yes, I know. Don't be upset with me. You want to have something to say? Go ahead.
East County forgives you. But thank you. The county executive has been very, very strong in that in East County, I'm sure you will agree, has been over the last 10, 15, 20 years been marginalized, underrepresented, is actually underserved in many capacities. we are given all the developments that are going. This is probably the least ask compared to our intentional spending in other parts of Montgomery County. For some of us who've been around in Up County, Mid County, Silver Spring, we intentionally invested, very, very early to get us to the development levels we are. And so this 50,000 as part of the earlier ULI studies, really looking at the White Oak area and the potential it has with all the assets that are out there, is to really start some type of marketing strategies. This is extremely important because where we are right now with all those developments, we are going to need a lot of marketing, branding, community engagement. To my understanding, and my distinguished colleague is in here, the type of activities that we are looking at for this very minimal amount is not what MCDC does. They do not do marketing at the regional level. If that's the case, then let's look at how marketing is done in other regions and ask the same questions. Secondly, the county executive also believes in the whole notion of really making sure we look at this from an equity and inclusion perspective, given that for many areas, historically, we've intentionally done a lot of on-the-ground investments to bring the development levels in Silver Spring, in Bethesda, and in Wheaton. I could outline some of the activities that we intend to do with these very minimal dollars, but I could also tell you the goal of my office, with the encouragement from the county exec, is to seek our private partnerships in adding to this very minimal request that we are making.
Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear the county executive wants more development. Councilmember Sells.
Thank you, Jeru, for your response. And I'm not sure who can answer this based on the staff recommendations. I'm inclined to agree with the staff. We don't have a plan for the White Oak Science Gateway. We don't know what's happening there, but I know there's $40-50 million sitting in reserve. How much?
I believe it's 32 million.
32 million. We can draw down from there. Or we can work with the developer to bring us a plan to justify partnering with him to market whatever plan they're going to build there. I am more than willing to allocate resources to help market a plan. But just to market the area that's waiting for a plan, I'm not really sure what you said. You had a few items to share. I didn't see anything in the packet that reflected a plan for $50,000 to market a hope of what is to come, because there's no plan yet.
For general understanding, the White Oak area is beyond just the Viva White Oak you're referencing here. That's the Poconti. Viva White Oak is part of a 3-node areas within the White Oak master plan area. That's the Hillandale, the FDA. You do have the greater White Oak area, the commercial area on Lockwood and New Hampshire. Then the Tech Road, where currently we will, you can see the development on the White Oak Town Center there. Then Montgomery College moving right across the street from the White Oak Town Center. You have the White Oak Medical Center and the FDA, and right between the hospital and the FDA is the Viva White Oak you represented. This plan, to be honest with you, looking at East County, we talk about the White Oak Master Plan, but many of those developments, including areas of transportation, housing, and other parts of our community life, is kind of interconnected with what happens in that White Oak area. So this is a little bit broader than just the Poconti Viva White Oak.
No, I totally agree. And we had a conversation, I believe last week or earlier this week, about business improvement districts, about urban partnerships, and how East County is a prime location to create something like that.
Thank you.
As the business center is engaging with businesses and talking with businesses about potential opportunities to, market that area to start attracting more economic development, that's something that we should look into doing through the business center and these business liaisons We can create an urban partnership. We can talk to that community about that. But for us to give $50,000 for something, and we haven't even conceived of a plan for what we're marketing and who exists there, who could continue to support this annually, or if this is a one-time request, I just think it's premature.
Yeah, again, this is
Yeah.
not for the Pecanti Viva White.
No, it's for the whole the whole area that you're
and
yeah.
the link outside of the White Oak area, because every aspect of the East County development is interconnected from Bortonsville all the way down to the Four Corners area. So that's just what I want to add. But I hear your comment.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Balcon.
I am the #1 cheerleader for the business centers, but these marketing dollars I don't think belong in the business center. The business center isn't set up to do the marketing. You don't have marketing experts on staff. This is not what the business center's to do. So I agree with my beloved chair.
Can we decide here? Are we gonna eliminate this? Okay. Is that the?
If I could just say something real quick. Mr. Banda, good to see you again.
Thank you.
You and I spent the morning, cold, rainy morning in Burtonsville, celebrating the groundbreaking at Burtonsville Crossing, which is a project long time coming to East County and to Burtonsville. As I noted at that event, people have been hungry for that development since I started knocking doors running for my first campaign for council nearly 10 years ago. And so it was a wonderful day for East County, which needs some TLC. And I understand that is the reason that this was put in there. I get it. There are also a lot of other questions regarding Viva White Oak, which we will get to later on today. Should we ever get to that later on today?
We will.
We will. There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. But I do agree with my colleagues in that while it is important and noteworthy, this is not the place in the budget for it. We've made these tough decisions in other aspects of the Economic Development Committee, that they were very important projects with worthy goals, but there are other places. And so I would ask that the county executive, as you start, as he and all of you start planning on your FY25 budget in just a few months, to think a little more strategically about some of these worthy goals and make sure that there are better places in the budget for them.
Excellent. I think that was clear. We're gonna move on. So business center customer relationship management.
Yes, so the business center, this is a $20,000 item, and the business center currently lacks a CRM system to track their business interactions. As was mentioned earlier, this would be important for tracking metrics, results, interactions, and it also help with accountability purposes for tracking demographics and making sure that all business needs are met. So the staff recommendation for this is a high priority.
Yes, I think my colleagues agree, so we can move on. Is this a high priority? Yes. I see yes. Okay, let's move on. What's next?
All right, well, that's all for the business center, and thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, and again, welcome, and we look forward to continue working with you, okay?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So next, incubator programs and DA.
Yes. So the incubator program, first of all, I want to explain that the incubator program used to include support for incubators and small businesses. The small business piece has been pulled out into a new NDA that's going to be next. So when you see the numbers for the incubator dollars here, I've pulled out from the FY23 comparison the amount that was shifted, just so that it's clear to see, you know, what the changes are this year in the incubator costs. And you'll see on page 22, page 2 of the memo, what the additions are this year. They're basically compensation annualization of costs. The only thing that's new to the incubators this year is some technical assistance for incubator tenants at a cost of $10,000. I did want to highlight the different incubators that are served here, which I'll go through pretty quickly. But to start out with, there was a study that was done of the incubators and how they should be operated. The study was done in 2020 and presented to the Fed Committee in 2021. And as a result of that study, the Fed Committee did support a goal of making sure that the county took over operation of the incubators from third-party vendors and also provide 3 new staff members, 1 in each of the incubators. So those 3 positions were approved in the FY23 budget. My understanding is they're not yet hired, so when I finish, I think we will ask for a status report, because I believe maybe they can even give us some new news on that. So the incubators include the Germantown Innovation Center. It's 32,000 square feet, and it has 12 wet labs and space in total for 25 to 35 companies. The requested appropriation is slightly over $1 million. And there is about half of that is covered by revenues. The thing to note here is that although it's 73% occupied in total, the wet labs are fully occupied. And so one of the issues that I think the council and executive staff will need to explore is, do we have the capability of adding additional wet lab space if that is what is in demand, and it appears to be. The second center is the Rockville Innovation Center, 23,000 square feet, room for 20 to 30 companies. This one has an appropriation of close to $500,000 and receives about $300,000 in revenues. And this one is 58% occupied. And the final innovation center is in Silver Spring, 20,000 square feet, room for 20 to 25 companies. This one slightly over $500,000 appropriation, only $128,000 in revenues. So not as well occupied as the other 2, only 53% occupied. And perhaps we can hear what might be done to increase occupancy in those centers. And the county also is the owner of the land and facilities for the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. And as part of being the owners, we keep a capital reserve of $25,000, although we're not operating that center. The issues that we need to address, first the vacancies, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues in the executive branch to bring you up to date on that. Second, the reconciliation list, the $10,000 in technical assistance for incubator tenants, which I recommend be put on the reconciliation list as a priority. And then finally, in terms of racial equity and social justice, the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice did not conduct a review of NDAs. So we may want to ask our colleagues here to speak about how they are addressing those issues as they operate the incubators, including how they do recruitment for companies there. So with that, I'll turn it over to them to answer some of those questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Michelson. In terms of the vacancies, we are going through final interviews for all 3 positions right now, so we are very optimistic about filling those.
See if they have questions.
Yeah, we're here to take questions.
Oh, thank you. So thank you for the breakdown. I really appreciate that the county executive was in lockstep with creating the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice to ensure that that is obtained all across government, from procurement to our businesses. I know we're going to be reviewing a report OLO is creating shortly in a few months. And so did the Office of Racial Equity weigh in on the budget for the creation of the NDA or in evaluating the makeup of the current incubator facilities occupants?
My understanding is that the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice did not weigh in on individual NDAs. However, and I'll defer to Mr. Smith on this, especially the Silver Spring Incubator, we have a focus in terms of recruitment for MFD companies, and that was a focus that started in conjunction with the council last year.
Correct. And so we have 3 incubators. The Germantown one is identity is really well known. And one note, and I apologize because in answering the questions for council staff, I forgot that I have a little bit more knowledge of this. We are converting some of the offices already up there to wet lab space, so that is in process. We're hoping to have those. It was a CIP project that the council approved a couple years ago, so not this council, but we are in process of finalizing, I believe, the purchase order is out. We're hoping to get that work done in the next few months. So correct on that, Ms. Michelson, we hope to have more wet labs soon. And then for Silver Spring, yes, through the council's action and then the executive's recommendation last year, the Silver Spring Incubator continues to focus on minority, female, and disabled-owned businesses. The Maryland Small Business Development Center performs a lot of programming down there focused on that, as well as our Black Collective and the Maryland Black Chamber. And then regarding for recruitment, the recruitment occurs based on the identities of each incubator because they need to be a good fit for each incubator, and so the county recruits through that and through MCDC for various strategic industries, and then through other partners for that. And then we don't have the racial equity and social justice lens for recruitment occurs through just making sure that we're reaching all businesses, not making sure that certain businesses fill the holes there.
And then one last question about the shift of funding to small business support. Can you speak to what responsibilities that will entail?
Sure. So it's more of a budget mechanism to provide transparency to what the business center is doing. So previously, the incubators and economic development partnerships, I believe is what it was called, was a non-departmental account. Last year, the council recommended or agreed with the executive when he had recommended an addition $877,000 for the Black Chamber and Black Business Council and Black Collective. That went into the incubator NDA budget. As I was looking at this year and working with Mr. Weissman and others in OMB, it made more sense as if we want to grow small business support services through those contracts that the county has to continue to put it in the incubator and economic development partnership NDA might confuse the public, also confuse us in terms of what's growing for the incubators versus what is growing for other support services. And so it made sense, or at least the recommendation was to bifurcate those so that going forward, if we want to do more support services through contracts or other specific small businesses, we can do that in that non-departmental account. If we want how we want to grow programming and operations of the incubators, that will be focused in that NDA. And so I think those would give a better transparency in terms of how the budget's working.
Will you be, I guess, creating a report or recommendations for how to use these resources or how they've been used?
We will
next
get to the small business
thank you.
support services NDA will be next. So save your questions,
Thank you.
Councilmember Sales. You might want to ask them then.
Do you have another question?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple questions. The first one is the staffing. In terms of the three positions, the three FTEs that are being filled now, is there a FY24 increase for those positions? Are we double counting those?
Yeah, the increase was because last year they were lapsed, or this year they're being lapsed, on the assumption that it was going to take a while to bring them on board, and next year it's full funding, assuming that they will be there the entire year.
But is there another addition that are they going to get a raise the day they join? The day they start. I feel like if they're being hired at the end of this fiscal year.
Anyone hired before June will get a GWA.
So so they will be hired before June?
That's the hope.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked about how hard it is to fill positions. So
Yeah.
Going back to the business liaison that's coming here very soon, it took almost 2.5 months of negotiations. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks. And then I'm not familiar with the transfer of funds to the cybersecurity center, the $25,000. Can I just get some background on that?
It's not a transfer. It's literally a capital reserve. So the county owns the land, owns a facility, and through the agreement with the federal government, if we need to repair something, this is where that funding will come from. And so in terms, again, of the line item is one big bulk money in the NDA,
Mm-hmm.
and we've given council staff how it's broken out, and so that's available for capital repairs at that
And
facility.
how many years what's the end result? How many years are we putting this money in?
So the way it will work is if we use $0 in fiscal '24, then that money goes back to it doesn't get used in at all. It's an appropriation available in case there is a need for capital expenditures. We're not accruing it. It will get zeroed out at the end of fiscal '24 if we don't use it, and it'll be another recommended appropriation to have the same amount for fiscal '25, let's say.
And did we use it for 2023?
I'll have to get back to you on that one.
So that's possible that we would recoup that.
I see Ms. Semple shaking her head no.
Okay.
So is that then available for this? How does that work? If we didn't spend it in 23, is it available?
Ms. Semple is saying if we don't use it, it gets lapsed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so based on what I see right now, the question that we have for the committee is, other than the compensations that, is the technical assistance for incubator tenants. If we want to have that as a priority or high priority, that's $10,000. I would think that's a priority for us, unless you,
I would think it's a
no, priority is fine. Yeah, okay. Yeah, priority. Are we in agreement? Okay, next item will be, what's next in the agenda? We have.
Okay, now we're moving on to the
Small
Small
Business
Business Support Services NDA. And, as I noted, it says FY23 funding. This NDA did not have funding in FY23. This is the amount that was shifted from the incubator NDA, just so that we can keep track of it. And in this NDA, there is a $50,000 increase to fund procurement and technical assistance center services. But as we go through the organizations, you'll see there's some shifting of funding we should talk about. So there's a number of organizations that receive money, and they're organizations that help small businesses. This is not, there's no FDAs associated with this NDA. It's just a vehicle for transferring money. The first group of funds goes to the Black Collective, Black Chamber of Commerce, Black Business Council. It was $877,000 last year, $877,000 in FY24, so no change. The second is the Latino Economic Development Center. Again, no change in the funding. $343,000 last year, the same recommended this year. BHI had received $200,000 in funding last year because this year, and because the contract was signed so late, or it's either just recently signed or about to be signed, the executive believes there's enough money to carry through FY24, so has not asking for additional funding for FY24. Instead, recommending that money go to the Maryland Small Business Development Center. And as you can see, last year the Maryland Small Business Development Center had a $30,000 allocation. This year the executive is recommending $220,000. Now some of that money was shifted to them as part of a special appropriation mid-year. So in looking at the increase, the $190,000 increase, I believe that the money that they received last year and hope to continue to receive, the $175,000 could be designated as a high priority, and the increase above what they received last year, $15,000, would be designated as a priority. So that keeps them whole with what they got through the special appropriation. The nonprofit village, again, level funding from last year, $235,000 last year, an increase this year. And then finally, the Procurement and Technical Assistance Center. And this organization, it was funded in a special appropriation in in 2022, part of the during the FY23 budget. But my understanding is that it has not yet been allocated. So I would, since this is new funding, I would suggest that it be put on the reconciliation list this year as a priority. Again, going back to this idea of if the organization received funding this fiscal year, we want continuity, but since it has not yet received it, to make it a priority rather than a high priority here. And the only other issue that I will mention here is that we're giving a lot of money to a lot of wonderful organizations, but I do think we need to better understand exactly what they're doing, what are the goals,
Yes.
what are the metrics. I know this is a theme for this
No,
committee.
we're
but-
gonna get there. I had a conversation with Mr. Jake Weisman about this. If you can please chime in, but we're gonna have a session after the budget to understand the function of all these different nonprofits, Black Collective, Latino Economic Development Center, Nonprofit Village. How are they using the money? How are they? What are the results? What are they producing? So if you can please jump in and give us a brief overview, but we're definitely gonna have to have a one-on-one on this as a committee.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Councilmember Fanning Gonzalez. And I will just say that all of these have contracts we execute with them. We shared the scope of services, or at least the high-level scope of services for the packet. Clearly, we collect reporting documents and metrics. Happy to go through that in a future session, but we are clearly collecting data. We're not right. And to Council President's Glass's comment previously, most of these are all invoice-based after the services are committed, and so we are double-checking what they're providing. And we can get to that in a future council session or committee session. Apologies.
Councilmember Sells?
Oh, no, I was just waiting to see if Jake was going to share about the. I thought you were-
we can.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I apologize. I thought we were trying to move more
Small
expeditiously.
business.
So, I mean, at the high level, I'll just start with the Black Collective, the Maryland Black Chamber, and the Black Business Council. So, for this year, for fiscal 23, one of the requirements for the Black Collective and the Maryland Black Chamber is to produce a lending feasibility study. They're going to be looking at determining the practicality, strengths, weaknesses, challenges that exist for financing for small minority, female, women-owned businesses, and recommend potential solutions. And as noted in the packet, that's only for this fiscal year. The money next year would be reallocated to other assistance. And so I believe we've gotten a draft study. Our team members are reviewing it for comments, but that will be available hopefully sometime in the next 6 months to share with the council. But that is one of the contract deliverables for that particular organization. In addition, those organizations are providing what's called a Leadership Academy. This is a 6-month program open to all businesses. It has intensive training, network, and hands-on experience to assist in business ownership and operational competencies for business owners. Again, another item they're doing is business engagement. They're doing networking forums to provide opportunities for MFD businesses to access opportunities in the greater community and greater mentorship opportunities. All of them, almost all of these contracts have technical assistance, which is usually one-on-one or workshops. For the Maryland Black Chamber and for the Black Collective, they're doing government contracting insights as one of the deliverables they need to be doing for these services. Specific focus on financial services, startup boot camp for Black businesses owners or Black entrepreneurs who are looking to start businesses, as well as their AMBER program, which is business coaching and technical assistance. And this is a short, 2 or 3 month one-on-one sessions with a mentor who's already a business owner working with a new business owner in order to able to help them get through some of the pitfalls, challenges that come. So that's just that one contract. Do you want me to continue through the others? I'm not sure what's most helpful for the committee right now.
I was only asking about the SBDC.
Okay, I
Yeah,
apologize. So the
increase.
SBDC.
If that's going to help all of the businesses, all these organizations with this technical assistance, or if this is just focusing specifically on the small businesses.
So the small business. All these contracts are for all of our businesses in the county.
Mm-hmm.
They're through specific organizations that have been long-term partners with the county. They have special niches, although I will note that obviously the Black Collective and the Maryland Black Chamber came in last year, so they're newer to the group. But again, the idea here is to make sure that we're providing opportunities that the business center does not have the expertise that these organizations have or the connections that these have. So we're trying to leverage those connections, going back to what the committee has been talking about, getting into the community where these business owners are, meeting them where they're at and providing the services they need. And so what the county is doing here is providing that. So for the SBDC, they're also providing counseling and coaching. That's what they were doing with the $30,000 that the county has been providing for a very long time. In addition, the additional money is providing focus on technical assistance to MFT businesses, especially in the incubators. Focus on the bilingual support through the SBDC Hispanic Business Center. And then training through the SBDC Accelerator Business Training Program, which those have been going on directly at the Silver Spring Innovation Center to help businesses there, but also to the broader community.
The staff recommendations.
Councilmember Beltran?
Thank you. I'm familiar with the Black Collective. We've partnered with them before. They're great. They're doing great work. Just the question about the one-time feasibility study. I'm confused about. So it looks like there's same funding for FY23 and FY24. So when is this? Is the study a 23 study or 24 study? And why don't we see either? Why are those numbers the same?
Well, primarily because we were hoping that, given that this was a new contract and we were just starting, some of the contract vehicle needed to provide they were not ready to start just doing business assistance and technical training from the get-go. And so the idea was, if the funding continued as it has been recommended in fiscal 24, the study would be really important to inform future assistance and coaching, which would then be made, rather than cutting their budget by whatever the amount is, they would now have the capacity to provide that to more businesses.
And to be clear, the FY24 funding is for different matters, right? So it's not a matter of they're getting the funding for the feasibility study again in FY24. So to use the Black Collective, Black Chamber as the example, their FY24 funding is going to be $350,000 for business coaching and technical assistance, $300,000 for seminars and workshops, $30,000 for nonprofit leadership development, and $25,000 for their leadership academy.
So they're getting essentially more money to do services in 2024, whereas in 2023, part of that funding was the study.
Correct.
Okay, and then I guess the procurement and technical assistance. Have we talked about that yet? So we'll hold off on that. Okay, thank you.
Mention it, but if the team
Yeah.
wants to.
And my recommendation, because it had not yet been funded, was
closer
to
to
call
the
it a
mic.
priority. What I've said is, where there's an existing program that you want to continue, make it a high priority. To the extent it's something relatively new in this year, just make it a priority.
So the question for this one is, I'm not familiar with the Procurement and Technical Assistance Center. What is that? Who does that?
It comes also through Maryland, the University of Maryland. I believe the name has changed recently, but I'll need to get back to you on that one.
And then, and so we haven't funded that in the past.
It was funded through the special appropriation that started the Black Business Council, the Black Business and Maryland Black Chamber. Unfortunately, the contract wasn't finalized during the fiscal year, so it needed to be recommended as a new item for this year.
And so I understand that our Office of Procurement does a lot of training and assistance for county contracts. To me, it would make sense for the Office of Procurement to expand what they do a little bit to include all certifications. To me, that might be the most streamlined way to do this. Comment on that?
I think it's an interesting point, and one that we can discuss with Director Shetty. My response would be that procurement process in the county is very different from the state or federal government, and our Office of Procurement is not set up in regards of federal or state procurement.
Yeah, I understand that. I think part of the reason that I thought that it might be a good fit is that our Office of Procurement has the relationships with our businesses, and our businesses, I'm sure they go to them all the time asking if they could do this. So I'm just curious as whether that might be more streamlined for our businesses as well as our money.
I'll check with Director Shetty and get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought the $50,000 for procurement under this section was specifically targeting small businesses and training them and kind of hand-holding them through the process of how to facilitate contracts with county government. And so I thought this would be an appropriate place to support small minority-owned businesses and ensuring that they get access. I know that the county's procurement is already doing that, but that's more so with, I thought, bigger businesses and businesses with They do it all, but I don't know if they have the targeted. Usually when they do those events, they're partnering with these nonprofits, with the Latino Economic Development Corporation, the Black Chamber. They usually partner with those smaller ones to reach the small businesses, because the people who are taking advantage are the ones who have been getting contracts and are more familiar with the process. And when they're doing the outreach activities, when you look at the flyers, you see who the organizations are that are co-sponsoring the event. So, if we can get more information about, next year, how these businesses have worked with our current entities, and hopefully we'll even have good numbers to report on the small businesses that are now doing business with the county. So I would support this being added to the priority list.
And if I can just add, I think the committee has raised some great questions about where's the best place to provide procurement assistance for small businesses, and a little bit more thought, so that next year they can come back with a more developed idea might be helpful.
Yes, Council President Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with staff recommendations for everything within this agenda item, but I think it's important to say, as we close out this committee session with the small business supports, that there is a lot of money appropriated to helping people do business in Montgomery County. There is a lot of overlap, there's some redundancy, and there are a lot of questions. But the overarching point is that we are using taxpayer dollars to help businesses simply navigate in their own community. And for as much as we've been talking about this over the last hour and a half, I look forward to future conversations about how we can streamline these processes, about making it easier for the small businesses rather than devoting precious resources to help them navigate something which should be easier to navigate on its own.
I would say quickly that for after the budget, when we have a session just on small businesses and so forth, I'm assuming that procurement is under the GEO committee, right? Maybe we not want to have a GEO joint session with us just to see what Mr. Shetty is doing and how his work is aligned with what we're doing with the small businesses and even the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation. I like to say the whole name for some reason. So let's do that. In my view, to be honest with you, this is an item, the procurement and technical assistance, that I will completely eliminate. But that's me. I just don't, at least until we get, to me, it's clear that we need more information and how things are in sync. So I would say I agree with the staff on the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, as a high priority. Although I saw that you have, Marlene, 175 as high priority and 15,000 as priority. Can you go over that really quick?
Yeah, so the 175 is what they have this year that they got through a special appropriation. 15,000 is an increase over what they were just given as a special appropriation, I believe, in May. So I've said let's keep them whole with what they're currently getting by making the 175 a high priority, but not give them the additional 15,000 at this time, or at least make it a lower priority. So just a priority, not the high priority.
Sorry. Any pushback on this?
Sure. So I'm just going to say that the Small Business Support Services NDA is a line item, and then we're trying to allocate it as best as possible. And so the executive is not recommending a new theme this year. Whether the recommendation is shifting funding around to meet the current needs based on current contracts and based on current expectations. So unlike the procurement and technical assistance, which is truly a new item, the $200,000, although not for the biohealth innovation contract this year, is being repositioned based on existing services that we're already providing. And so I do not see the council staff's recommendation to just simply put it on a priority list. Like, this is a recommended appropriation that existed last year.
Understood. I actually going to agree with you and say that it should be, the whole thing should be a high priority, but not, so that's on that. And then on the $50,000 for procurement and technical assistance, I will say let's eliminate it. Any questions so we can move forward? You have a question or comment on this?
I don't agree with eliminating it.
Priority then.
Okay, priority. Thank you.
I would agree with eliminating it, but
What about you?
I agree with staff recommendation.
Which is priority. Okay, fine. So priority on that one, and then high priority on the whole small business DC, right? Okay, good. I understood. All right, move on. Thank you so much. Next, we'll have the alcohol beverages services.
All right,
Thank
happy
you.
Friday. No, wait, save the best for last, or close to last.
Yeah, you're not the last one,
no,
so
no,
don't
I
get
know,
excited.
Alcohol on Friday goes together. Before I begin, I just wanted to let Dr. Durbin introduce herself and her team, given that this is the first time they're appearing from the committee. And so, whenever you guys are ready.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see you all. For the record, my name's Kathy Durbin. I'm the Director of Alcohol Beverage Services. I'm going to introduce my team. We have Marty Udermol, who's the Chief of Administration. Amy Saman, Chief of LRE, Licensing, Regulation, and Education. I didn't know she was back there, but she's here with us. James Felix, Acting Chief of Retail. John Zeltner, Chief of Wholesale. And then Anthony Jones, who is Human Capital Management. Where's Anthony? I'm sorry. Anthony. And then Courtney Orsini, who is Management and Budget. The most important people are here to my left. So it's nice to see you all, and thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for coming. Do you want to?
Okay, I'll begin. So before we begin, just so the committee's aware, the council's ability to change specific line items in the ABS budget is limited. What council can do is request the county executive to submit an amendment or a change. The exceptions are compensation, which is, of course, essentially globally decided by council, and a few other items such as print and mail charges and motor pool adjustments. If you look on staff recommendations are summarized on pages 1 and 2, but if you look on page 2, section B, that gives you a summary of all the changes that are happening on the expenditure, revenue, and transfer side of things. So in essence, overall personal costs are going up significantly, 10%, largely due to the FY24 and FY23 compensation increases by about $4 million. Operating costs, capital outlays, and debt service are all going down, however, giving you a net increase in expenditures of $2.5 million or 3.7%. Revenues are going up by 3.6% to $3.6 million. So right there, there's a net revenue increase. However, there's also an increase in the indirect cost transfer back to the general fund, which covers certain charges imposed, if you will, by the finance department and risk management, things like that, as a cost of doing business for the county. And then there's an increase in the amount going to the CIP in 24, an increase of $1.7 million. That is going towards the ABS Retail Refresh Project, which is paying for renovations and to existing ABS stores, which are rebranding as Oak, Barrel, and Vine. I believe we've already have 2 completed projects. Most recent one's Montrose Crossing back in January, and several more in the works. All that's being said, it is resulting in a general fund transfer decrease of about $1.7 million. And that does reflect the need, based on the policy level, to keep a fund balance in the liquor fund of $4.8 million, which is currently at that policy level, or close to it. I have laid out some options for discussion. If you look under section F on page 3, that contains some historical information on what the fund balance has been in both the approved budgets and actual. And so the committee, I'll stop there. The committee can discuss if it would like to request any changes to general fund transfer amount for FY24.
Thank you for that. And obviously, if you have a presentation, if you want to go through any of this, just let me know. But I would just reinstate, and you touch on this, based on the state law, the council does not have direct budget authority over ABS. We can make recommendations, but the county executive needs to agree. So that's something that the whole committee needs to, since it's our first session on this, I wanted to highlight that. And I know there's present two of the council and the county executive agreeing to changes to this county executive recommendations. So this is nothing new if we end up making those recommendations to the county executive. But again, he needs to agree. Hopefully by May 8th will be the earliest, or the latest, I would say, the latest. And I was looking into your recommendations, and I was considering, for the committee to discuss, obviously, reducing the fund balance by $2 million to $2,884,000, similar to what happened in fiscal year 19 and 21, which averaged $2,500,000 over those 3 years, and passing on the cost to customers on increased credit card fees, thereby saving close to $1 million, right? So that's what I was thinking, but I look forward to your feedback because we need to save money. So there you go.
So thank you for that. I can speak a little bit on the credit cards, but this was we haven't really had a chance to discuss because it was just presented, and so it hasn't been something that's been considered in the past. Most people that come to our warehouse, they use credit cards, the businesses, the small businesses, so that would be just a concern on the top of my head, but something to discuss. I don't think it's out of the question. Do you have any comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, team. So I appreciate the chair diving deep into the dollars and cents of the business, but I want to take a step back, right? We know that ABS has had its best years probably historically ever. Is that fair to say over the last number of years? Can you share with us what the sales have been, what the revenues have been? I know during the pandemic, and as we've transitioned out of the pandemic, everything I've been reading is that wine, liquor, and beer sales have increased nationally. And I know that to be true here. So can you just paint us a picture of what the business has been doing?
So, thank you. I'm Courtney Orsini, Management and Budget Specialist, just to introduce myself. I will say that if you look at our most recent financial statements as of March, we are up in sales, gross profit, and net income. If you look to pre-COVID numbers, we're up drastically in sales and gross profit and net income. We've been trying to do a mix of comparing ourselves to prior year and to pre-COVID.
Can you give us some numbers? Be specific.
So, for instance, in sales compared to pre-COVID, as of March compared to the same period in 2020, we're up 11.6 million in sales.
Rephrase that. I just want to understand. Right. So, can you either give me a fiscal year or a calendar year number and what the gross and what the revenue is, that sort of thing?
So current fiscal year 23
okay,
compared to fiscal year 20, so pre-COVID, we are currently up $11.6 million in sales.
What is FY23? Give me a baseline for one of those numbers.
208 million.
So in FY23, which we have not yet completed.
Correct.
So in the first 9 months of FY23, we are, repeat your number?
208 million.
208 million, and that's gross.
Yeah, gross sales.
Got it. And what was it FY22?
So this would have been the number I was talking about in terms of the 11.6 increase was based on FY20, so pre-COVID.
Sure.
That was 196.5 million.
196.
And that was as of the same point in time.
9 months in,
not year
approximately.
to date.
Okay. Yeah. And what were we in FY22? What were we last year? Do you have that?
205 million at the same
so we're still
point.
okay.
Yeah.
So we're still above, but you're trying to make the comparison to pre-pandemic and post, and either way, it's still charting up. Okay.
Correct.
And what was the operating expenses, which I guess include the bonding and everything else?
So I don't have that number in front of me right now, but I did provide Naeem with the most recent financials. I'm not sure if he shared, but we would be happy to share.
Yeah,
with you.
it's a financial spreadsheet, but we can make it presentable and share that.
Well, and then I get, there are a lot of different ways to ask the question or come up with the answers. What is the profit at this point?
You're talking net income or
Correct.
gross profit?
Net, yeah.
Net income. So as of the most recent current year,
Yeah.
23.7 million.
23.7 million. And what was net profit last year at this time?
Last year at this time was 26.2.
Okay. So 26.2 last year. Okay. So despite having nearly $3 million more in sales, gross sales this year, we are down $2.5 million in net profit.
Net profits, correct.
Okay. And why is that?
I would say a large part of that is due to cost of goods sold increases that we've seen and have not, again, that's another thing that we haven't passed along to our customers.
Sure.
Waiting to see, how things level out after COVID, but we have seen a dramatic increase in our cost of goods sold.
Okay. Thank you for that. Enlightening and informative, and I'll say this is the first time that ABS is before this council, this committee, and when we were restructuring the council, I thought it was extremely important to have ABS come before the Economic Development Committee. It used to be public safety, and I absolutely understand why decades ago it was put into the portfolio of public safety. But in this day and age, with the hospitality business being as large as it is, and with our residents being as thirsty as they are, $208 million thirsty, this is an economic development issue. And so back to the question that Madam Chair asked about the credit cards. It strikes me as odd that credit card fees, which are part of the business, are not built into the cost of business, and instead it's being put on the burden of the general taxpayer in terms of the operating budget. Can you explain why that might be? Neither can I. And so while I understand there might be some state laws regarding what we can and can't do, I would like to do everything I can to make sure that credit card processing fees are built into ABS's business model and not transferred to the general fund for all taxpayers to take on. And so I'm open to all suggestions. I throw this out, whether it is a reduction somewhere else or an addition somewhere else to make that, or if you all want to come back after consultation with the executive and make an amendment in the next week or so before we wrap this up. But I do think it is a cost of business and it's unfair to the general taxpayer. So thank you.
I agree. That's why I brought it up. Councilmember Balcom.
Taking a different tact, the county is in the business of selling alcohol. That's not in dispute. So they are the retailer. And when we talk about the cost of doing business, the credit card cost is the cost of doing business. And so just like the cost of goods sales, just like the rent, just like the marketing, most businesses, most retailers absorb that credit card cost. So I consider it to be a cost of doing business. And it's not that we're putting the cost onto the taxpayer, because this is we're getting the net proceeds. And part of the net proceeds is you have to deduct the credit card cost. So from a business perspective, I consider the credit card cost similar to rent and staffing. So that's just an alternative way of looking at it. If we were to do capture the credit card, it wouldn't just be the 950,000, it would be the 4 million, because you know, it's not as if we would make a change for the increase, we would make a change for the full amount. I wouldn't recommend that, but I understand that others might.
Councilmember Sells, do you want to go? We can start debating this, but I think at least I'm set and put it on the side, and we're not debating this. I don't think that the government should be doing this at all, but that's me. So I don't think taxpayers should be paying for, at least for credit card fees. So I also come in with that perspective. But Councilwoman, and I'm not saying that I'm gonna tackle this and change the law or making sure that Montgomery County stops having this monopoly on alcohol, but I just feel that taxpayers shouldn't be paying for this credit card fees at the very least. But Councilwoman Sales, can you jump in?
I was just going to concur with staff recommendations and approving all changes being placed on the reconciliation list.
Just to be clear, the changes are not being recommended for reconciliation list because we can't change it. Yeah, so
it's like an executive.
They're all being approved as part of the recommended and budget going to become approved. Yep.
All right, let's do something. Can you maybe you can draft a letter and share our concerns with the county executive? You can see different views here, and then you can get back to us before May 8th. Is that?
We can do that.
Yes, because at the end of the day, he has to agree. Okay, good. Are we okay with this? Okay, so is there anything else? Thank you so much for your work. All right, next we have the SAP amendments, White Oak Science Gateway redevelopment. You can start.
Okay, the item before you is a March amendment the county executive transmitted on March 15th. As discussed in the packet, there was a previous amendment in January which pushed out $11.5 million of funding from the 6-year period to the beyond 6 period. The CE is now recommending an additional $7 million funding shift from the 6-year period to the beyond 6-year period for a total shift of $18.5 million. The rationale was essentially this project was, until recently we found out there was no real movement or progress on it, and so to free up fiscal capacity for other priorities in the CIP, county executive had proposed these shifts. Given recent developments and news that we've all heard, and council staff and executive branch staff is still going through, I am actually recommending that we defer this decision to full council, giving us time to analyze and come back. I think overall, wherever we wind up, next year in the full CIP, we will have a full, thorough review of this project. But for the time being, given the signs of progress, I'm recommending we defer to full council.
Does the county executive's team agree with that recommendation? Any concerns?
I don't know that I think it's necessary, but I think that there's enough money in the project through FY24 to cover anything that could possibly happen and go through the process of billing and reimbursements. Later years maybe would be different, but we will certainly know better for next CIP. But if you want to wait, obviously that's fine, but I don't think that's going to change anything, particularly in the early years.
Good afternoon, Greg Austin, Department of General Services. To reiterate Ms. Beck's point, although we did receive some encouraging news recently, and obviously I believe during our last work session we requested a work session with GLDC and the developers for the former Site 2 property in Viva White Oak, and so we will certainly learn more at that point. From what we understand in our justification for the original funding expenditure that Mr. Mia covered was the way that this CIP project works is a reimbursement for a portion of 3 master plan roadways that would be constructed in coordination with the Viva White Oak project. It's great that we've established new partnerships and things are on the move, but we believe that we are probably at least a few years away from actual roadway construction. And again, these are reimbursements, and so and reimbursements for 3 different roadways. So to Ms. Beck's point, we feel like we have enough in the 6-year CIP to cover any near-term necessities, and then we can revisit the entire funding schedule as part of the FY25 full CIP, and obviously part of a bigger picture that we'll receive a report on over the summer.
Sure, I'll just add that this project is being considered by staff as part of the reconciliation process, so there may be additional changes beyond what's captured in this amendment, but we're not quite there yet. So in any event, what full council will receive will likely be different than what's in here.
Oh, so I think we should hold then. And plus, it will be great to have the district council member present too, and we can do it all at once. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, beautiful. Moving forward. Burtonsville.
Okay, this is truly the easiest one for today. The state has awarded $5 million in this fiscal year for the Burtonville Crossing Shopping Center. It's essentially reimbursing reimbursing some of the costs associated with the development of that site. The money is being managed by DGS as the fund administrator. There's some work, I believe, to be done in terms of setting up processes, controls, making sure the reimbursement process works smoothly. But essentially,
Your mic is off.
oh, sorry. It's a $5 million FY23 appropriation, and there's an additional $2 million in FY24, all of it state aid. So staff recommendations approval.
Any words from the county executives team?
As the council president was present this morning when we were doing the groundbreaking work, has already begun on the revitalization of this center. The state was very generous in securing $5 million in previous sessions and another $2 million. As Mr. Mia notes, we'll be administering this, so it'll flow from the state to the county. Grant agreements are nearly in place. They're with the county attorneys and ultimately will be executed by the county executive and then sent off to the state. So we've got a very good system and protocol for when they incur these expenses and how they're reimbursed, and being good custodian of this $5 million and ultimately $7 million. So we're very excited, and it's going to be a great project, and we'll see at the ribbon cutting when it's complete.
This is very exciting, and I'm sure there's gonna be some marketing alongside all this. I had to say that to you. So do you require an actual vote? Is that
Yes.
from the committee?
Yes. It's a supplemental and an amendment. So your vote will go to full council, and we could place on a consent calendar for the appropriation.
Okay,
the
now-
supplemental.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Balkin. Okay, Council President Glass.
I appreciate Mr. Austin recognizing the event tonight, today, and Mr. Banda again smiling, still glowing from the event, who's sitting behind you. But just want to re-up. I think it's important to express from the dais our great appreciation for the District 14 team, Senator Zucker and Delegates Kaiser, Queen, Merku North, and former Delegate Ludke for securing $7 million to help move this project forward.
Beautiful. With that said, I need a motion.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? The ayes have it. It passes. Very excited. Thank you. And with that, we are done. Adjourn.